The Ministry of Justice admits it no longer knows what to do. In a federal courtroom in Minneapolis, the voice speaking is not that of a protester or an activist. It is a government prosecutor. Faced with a judge asking why court orders are being ignored, why people are being denied hearings, why the Constitution appears to be treated as optional, her answer is starkly simple. We have no guidance. We don't know what to do. That is the contradiction. The very institution charged with enforcing the law is openly admitting it no longer has direction. And this matters to you because when the state no longer knows how to follow its own rules, it isn't abstract principles that disappear. It is concrete rights, warrants, deadlines, safeguards that are meant to protect everyone. Then the scene takes an unsettling turn. The prosecutor adds that she would almost welcome being held in contempt of court just so she could sleep for 24 hours. The judge responds that this chaos is, at least in part, of your own making. But here is the detail that changes everything. This moment is not an outlier. It is a visible symptom of a system being hollowed out at speed. And once you understand what is really happening behind this hearing, the story takes on an entirely different meaning. What happened in Minneapolis is being presented as a procedural mishap, a frustrated judge, a tense hearing, an overwhelmed prosecutor. But look closer. What we see in that courtroom is only about 60% of the story. The rest is unfolding off camera. The judge is not asking abstract questions. He wants to know why court orders are being ignored, why people are brought before the court without warrants, why legally required hearings are not taking place, and above all, why these violations keep happening. Not once, not twice, again and again. The response is not a legal argument. It is an admission of leadership vacuum. We have no guidance. That is where the frame shifts. Systems can make mistakes. But when a system no longer knows which rules it is meant to follow, we are no longer talking about error. We are talking about rupture. This prosecutor is not an isolated case. She is described as an immigration lawyer pushed into the role of federal prosecutor because the prosecutors themselves have left. So the real question is not why one hearing went off the rails. The real question is this: what happens when the justice system keeps moving forward while the people meant to run it are no longer there? Now look at how that vacuum is being filled. The first piece of evidence is immediate and undeniable. This is not speculation or outside commentary. It is written plainly into what is happening inside the Department of Justice itself. Federal prosecutors are leaving in large numbers. So many that in some jurisdictions there are simply not enough prosecutors to appear in court. The concrete result is that immigration lawyers are being drafted into federal prosecutorial roles without preparation, without a clear chain of command. In Minneapolis, this reality becomes visible. The prosecutor explains that she is doing everything she can, yet she cannot even get her own institutional clients to comply with court orders. The judge speaks of non-compliance. She speaks of exhaustion. She almost asked to be punished just to be able to sleep. Notice what is completely absent. At no point does she reference a directive. No memo, no instruction from above, not a single sentence along the lines of, "This is what the department has told us to do." That silence is not accidental. In a functioning legal system, authority flows downward. Here it appears to have evaporated. And a vacuum like that never stays empty for long, so the situation does not stabilize. It deteriorates. That leadership void begins to trigger a chain reaction. When prosecutors leave, when teams are hollowed out, as it is being described, the institution does not stop. It improvises, and that improvisation becomes visible in how the Department of Justice suddenly tries to refill itself. What was once one of the most sought-after legal positions in the country, a role thousands competed for, is now being openly advertised on social media. A senior DOJ official quite literally writes, "If you are a lawyer, if you support the president and an anti-crime agenda, send me a private message." No formal process, no examination, a direct message. This is where the story turns, because this shift is not cosmetic. It signals the normalization of emergency. Recruitment is no longer slow or selective. It is fast, it is broad, and it is happening while judges in courtrooms are observing court orders being violated at an unusual, almost unprecedented rate. What was once exceptional begins to feel routine, and when exceptions become normal, safeguards disappear quietly. The question is no longer why the system is cracking. The question is what is replacing it. The second piece of evidence is even more unsettling because it reveals a direct contradiction between rhetoric and action. On the one hand, the Department of Justice claims it wants to enforce the law and restore order. On the other, it is now recruiting judges and prosecutors through social media posts, sometimes from official accounts, sometimes using visuals that resemble memes more than institutional notices. A DOJ official writes that immigration enforcement is becoming real and announces the recruitment of judges who will decide deportation cases. These are not federal judges appointed under constitutional procedures. They are administrative judges. And this detail fundamentally changes how the entire picture looks. These are precisely the judges whose decisions are used to replace judicial warrants with administrative ones. The contrast is stark. The Constitution requires warrants issued by independent judges. But the emerging position is effectively this. We have our own judges, we recruit them, and they will sign what we need. All of it wrapped in patriotic slogans and warnings about generational consequences. Again, notice what is never mentioned. There is no talk of additional safeguards, no reference to strengthened oversight, no acknowledgement of risk, only speed, pressure, and an implicit certainty that the system must move forward even as its legal foundations begin to fracture. And now everything starts accelerating at once. This acceleration does not occur on a single front. It happens everywhere, simultaneously. While administrative judges are being rushed into place, other announcements appear. The Department of Justice is not only looking for prosecutors, it is also recruiting special agents, investigators, overseas personnel, all through short, direct, almost promotional messages. Apply now. Serve your country. The format is simple. The pace is fast. The depth is gone. Inside the courts, judges begin to describe a deeply troubling pattern. They speak of federal agencies violating more court orders in a single month than others have seen in an entire career, not because of sophisticated legal strategy, but because of an inability to keep up, a loss of control, a breakdown in coordination. At the center of all this are lawyers like the one in Minneapolis, raising their hands. She does not say she is refusing to comply. She says she cannot force her own institutional clients to follow even basic orders, appearances, deadlines, hearings, the bare minimum. This is the breaking point when orders are issued but no longer followed, when sanctions are discussed but fail to restore control. The system enters dangerous territory. It continues to produce rulings, detentions, removals, but without real command. The question is no longer what is happening today. The question is blunt and unavoidable. What happens if this continues? At this stage, the impact stops being abstract. It becomes personal. Because when a justice ministry lacks prosecutors, it is not only immigration hearings that collapse, drug trafficking cases, fraud investigations, corruption prosecutions, violent crime cases all slow down or stall entirely. Resources are finite. And when they are consumed by permanent emergency, something else is inevitably abandoned. Picture what that looks like in real terms. Files piling up, victims waiting, investigations delayed, and alongside this, people being arrested, detained, moved, without even the most basic procedural guarantees being honored. Not because of ideology, but because the teams no longer exist or no longer respond. This is where it reaches you. Not in theory, in daily reality. Fewer prosecutions for serious crime, less capacity to enforce court decisions, more arbitrariness, more improvisation, and always the same unspoken justification: we must keep going, whatever the cost. If this feels familiar, if you have ever watched a system keep running while no one truly controls it anymore, say so in the comments. Because what you are sensing is not accidental. It is a signal. To understand that signal, we need to look at the mechanism that makes all of this possible. That mechanism is less visible than chaotic hearings or social media recruitment, but far more powerful. It rests on three simple levers: fear, speed, and spectacle. In a state of permanent urgency, fear becomes a management tool. Fear of losing one's job, fear of punishment, fear of being labeled disloyal to the mission. Red lines blur, not because the rules have changed, but because no one has the time or security to defend them. Speed replaces procedure. Recruit faster, decide faster, move faster. Every skipped step is justified by the claim that there is no alternative. And the longer this logic persists, the more normal it becomes. What would have caused outrage yesterday becomes routine today. Then there is spectacle. Public announcements, patriotic slogans, eye-catching visuals. Everything is designed to project control and resolve, even as internal structures weaken. The appearance of authority slowly replaces actual authority. Here is the uncomfortable insight. Systems like this do not collapse overnight. They keep functioning, but in reverse. They generate outcomes without stable foundations. And as long as the consequences remain diffuse, they continue. But this dynamic cannot remain stable indefinitely. Every system driven by pressure eventually reaches a breaking point. That point may be closer than it appears. From here, two paths begin to emerge. Neither is theoretical. Both are already unfolding. The first is acceleration. The ministry continues to lose experienced staff. Emergency hiring becomes standard practice. Administrative judges and improvised prosecutors take on greater roles. Decisions move faster than oversight. In this path, violations of court orders are no longer anomalies. They become data points. Each failure quietly shifts the boundary of what is considered acceptable. The second path is more volatile. It runs through the courts themselves. Judges begin speaking openly about contempt, about sanctions, about enforcement, not as abstract threats, but as last resort tools. Yet here lies the central tension. A judge can punish a lawyer. A judge cannot rebuild an institution that has been emptied of its people. And notice this crucial detail. In the hearings described, no one promises improvement. No one says reinforcements are coming. No one outlines a clear plan. That silence is heavy because it suggests the next phase is not correction, but stress testing. The system moves forward, orders accumulate, pressure rises, and somewhere another hearing is already scheduled with the same questions, the same potential violations. The only unknown now is which of these two paths will dominate. One idea connects all these scenes, all these hearings, all these improvised announcements. This is not merely a staffing crisis. It is a quiet crisis of legitimacy. When an institution as powerful as the Ministry of Justice begins operating without clear leadership, without stable personnel, without consistent respect for its own rules, it sends a dangerous message, not through words, but through actions. It shows that the law can continue to be enforced even as its foundations weaken. That is precisely where the risk becomes systemic. Here is the essential reframing of this entire story. This is not a dramatic collapse. It is erosion, a sequence of small compromises, emergency hires, normalized violations, until no one remembers what normal operation once looked like. And this moment is not an ending. It is a beginning, because what happens today in these courtrooms will shape how power is exercised tomorrow, especially when no one is watching. If you want to follow how this evolves, understand what comes next, and see what others do not take the time to examine, subscribe. This story does not end here. It is only just beginning.